Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Blue Box Banter, a Doctor Who recap podcast done by two ex-Doctor Who addicts now revisiting their nostalgic obsession. On this week's episode, we talk about one of the most iconic episodes of this season, simply entitled Dalek. While we do spend a substantial amount of time bashing the worst character, Adam, we also discuss the inherent complexities of the episode itself. From the importance of physical affection, the distortion of the self due to hatred, and the allegory of the Dalek itself, we cover it all. But we also talk smack about Adam. Screw you, Adam. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy our unhinged and easily distracted recap of this episode of Doctor Who.
Okay, so I can't believe we're already on Dalek.
This episode takes place in 2012.
Oh my god.
In 2005 felt like the far future.
Okay, I just want to start off with the fact that when I was younger, I thought that it was Dalek, and it was
Dalek?
Because I thought it was like British people, you know how they always say it's like
like,
Wah-bottle? I thought it was like Dalek.
Dalek,
And there was actually an R in there, but obviously there isn't.
God.
So for the longest time I called them Daleks. Like garlic.
Garlics.
Well, they look like salt and pepper
They do
shakers.
look like so much pepper shakers.
Oh,
This place is takes specifically in Utah. In a bunker in Utah.
So
For no reason.
I don't get it.
Well, the reason that they're there is because I think the Doctor gets like some kind of like help signal.
He gets a distress signal.
Yeah,
from
which
something.
I don't know how. I guess the Dalek was kind of just beaming out.
He was just like somebody out there, for the love of God.
And I love this because, well, I guess spoilers, because we don't even know that the Dalek's there
No.
yet. They're just walking through this weird museum of there's a Cyberman head, and
I do love that it's the old Cybermen too.
yeah,
Like the
it's the
Who.
throwback episode.
Yeah, you got that, and then you have the Slovene claw.
Yeah.
Which I thought was funny because the Slovene, I wonder if it was specifically a Slovene claw. Did they somehow retrieve that from the
That's what I
rubble?
was wondering too. Or did the Slovene come back at some point?
Or
I
was
don't
it a different Rex Corcofel-Batorius family?
You never know. Yeah, because I guess Slovene isn't really their race; it's their last name.
Yeah.
Whatever. The character in this episode.
It's Elon
Two
Musk.
of them. Both of the characters.
Or just
This
Elon
is
Musk.
Adam. This is our first Adam
Oh
episode.
God.
And the man, the American, he's super American too.
They really just I love how anti-American Doctor Who gets.
Because he's so annoying about it too, and he's
Yeah.
like, I have all these things in my bunker to protect them, even though it's actually just a museum that only I can look at.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Which is very British of
and
them.
he's like, this is my bunker. I've got all this security detail or whatever, and I'm doing good, but all he's doing is just putting stuff in glass boxes.
Well,
And he's so annoying, and he makes the joke about because they're like, we have an intruder on the.
Well, how did they get in?
Through the window. And I'm like, no, you're not allowed to make that joke.
And he goes, everyone laugh, and they all go, ha 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 ha. Oh, there's also the joke about, I don't like the president, we need to get a new one in there. And someone was like, that's not how that works. And he was like, alright, you're fired.
And then the lady's like, should we do a Republican or a Democrat? And then he's like, Democrat, because Democrats are funny, or something like that.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, so you're obviously a Republican. Cool.
It's like British people writing Americans.
Yeah. But I love how this episode basically has Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg as two different characters, because you got what's his name? I'm blanking on it right now.
The rich guy?
Yeah.
I in my head and in my notes I've written him as the annoying American.
Oh, let me look up his name. Henry Van Staten.
Oh, of course it's a Van Staten,
Yeah.
because you gotta make him some really American old money.
Oh, yeah. So this is the first time the Dalek shows up in New Who.
And it's a very interesting way to show them, because instead of it being guns blazing, he's a prisoner.
I would love to be an old Who fan watching this episode.
Oh my god, it's the Dalek!
Well, because I feel the impact is almost lost if you don't know the Dalek a little bit.
You're like, what is this Metaltron?
But I can't even the part where it's how's it going down there? Oh, and it's just screaming. Like that, like the specific filter they use for the Daleks, I feel like if you knew, you were like, no.
No, it can't be.
No. And then, and then it gets revealed later and you're probably like, no!
Not the Daleks!
Not the Daleks! Yeah, so they get in, they're in there, and they get arrested, and, by Van Statten's, like, security detail.
And this is where we get more lore. Because the doctor, when he goes into the room, because he's like, I want to see this prisoner.
No, we still got more stuff beforehand, dog.
I don't know what happens before that.
So they get brought to Van Statten's office, and Adam, the dingus himself, has just bought a bunch of stuff from like auction, and he's like, it might be like a weapon, and the doctor's like, you're holding that wrong. It's a musical instrument. And then there's this like really like gross misogynistic moment of like the doctor and him are like having like a dick measuring contest basically.
Yeah.
And then he looks at Rose and is like, I see you're a collector of your own, and you're like,
God, yes, I forgot it. I specifically wrote that out of my head.
And then he keeps referring to Rose as she.
Yeah.
And then she's like, she's got a name. Oh, she's British. And like,
oh yeah, and he tries to set up her and Adam because they're both British.
It gives the same energy as like, oh, I have a friend who's gay. Do you guys know each other?
I have a friend who's British.
Yeah, and so he's like, go canoodle or spoon or whatever you Brits do, and you're just like, I yearn for death.
Writing. I don't know if it's the writing in this episode specifically for him, because the rest of the episode's great. The writing for this guy, I don't know if it's just that they were trying so hard to be joking like Americans that it just became awful, or if it just was really bad. His lines are, it might just be the actor too, because the actor didn't deliver the lines very well.
Do you know what it reminds me of? I know the only K-drama you've watched is Squid Game, but you know how the Americans act in Squid Games? That's how Americans act in literally every K-drama. There is no such thing as a good American actor in K-dramas for some reason, and he gives that kind of energy.
That's what I was gonna say. Like they imported him.
Yeah, and it's just weird because his acting isn't good, and his delivery is really weird, but at the same time it somehow works for being a shitty American character.
Because, I mean, if you're watching this in the perspective of a British the British population, you don't really notice how kind of silly it is. Yeah. But we notice because we live next to the United States, so we're like, this is a little bit too silly that it's almost like not even funny.
It ramps up like the satire factor a little too far.
I don't think it ramps up the satire enough. It's mostly just the annoying bits. So there's no like joke there. It's just, I'm American and I think British people are funny.
Yeah, like that's like the end all and be all. Like he's like, I'm rich, I have no conscience, and British people make me laugh.
Control the government.
And we're like, oh boy. I mean, like, yes, but also like, let's chill out. So Adam and Rose go to like his little like workshop where he like I don't know if it's because we know what happens next with Adam, but the way that they try to write him as, like, a younger, hotter doctor really annoys me.
Yeah.
Because there's that scene where he's like, oh, did you see, like, the look on their face is fantastic. And that's obviously like, supposed to be, like, Rose connecting him with the doctor. And you're like, ew, no.
Also, Rose is still dating Mickey at this point.
Yes, technically.
So this whole thing, like, if this episode had come out maybe a couple episodes later, where, like, Rose is kind of broken it off with Mickey, okay, but she literally just left him. Like, in the context of the show, they just left him, and, like, technically they're still dating. And, like, I don't know, I think Rose is really out of character in this episode, because I don't think she would have given Adam the time of day.
I'm almost wondering if, because sometimes...
Who wrote this episode?
Hold on. I'll look that up in a second. I was just gonna say, I'm almost wondering if it was out of production order. Like, maybe. So, because sometimes they'll produce shows in a certain order, but then air them out of that order, unless they're, like, key episodes that have to be in a certain order. Because this is, not saying that it's a filler episode by any stretch of the imagination. It's a great episode. But maybe this was intended to go, like,
well,
later.
yeah, especially because the later episodes are so, like, impactful that maybe they had to move up the Dalek episode a bit. It still doesn't make sense, the choices, and the fact that Rose, I almost called her Amy. Woo! The fact that Rose is, like, talking to Adam, I just don't think she would have liked him.
Okay, so it was Rose, Aliens of London, and World War III were shot first, and then End of the World and The Unquiet Dead were shot second.
Interesting.
Dalek and Father's Day were shot back to back.
So this was in order then, kind of.
It's still later on, because we're only on episode 5, and this was filmed as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as like the next, as episode 6. Then Father's Day, then The Long Game, The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances, Boomtown, Bad Wolf, and The Parting of Ways. Interesting. So that's why I wonder, Dalek was written by Robert Shearman. I don't know who that is.
And maybe it was just, I don't want to, like, criticize the writing, like, because it's been, like, 20 years.
It's not bad writing.
I think the Dalek writing, like, the way that he wrote the characters was so good, but I think I don't think Adam should have been in the episode.
I hate Adam.
Adam detracts so much from the episode, and, like, the weird doctor parallels that they're trying to do make no sense.
I don't like maybe Rose was just like horned up this episode or something. Like she's been hanging out with this old man for so long. The problem is
Adam just isn't charismatic enough.
No.
For it to make sense for me.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my my biases because like
he's extremely straight.
Yeah. Like it's I don't know. Like I'm maybe like because even as like a man, the Doctor has always been like at least New Who to me reads as either queer or neurodivergent coded or both.
Yeah, and you just have this random character that makes no sense.
And you're like, who is this exclusively straight neurotypical man trying to interfere with my ship?
Especially because the rest of the episode you have the Doctor and the Dalek parallels, which are so strong, and then you're like, the Adam thing just doesn't make sense.
And why does he stick around?
Yeah, why did he stick around for the only to mess up in the next episode?
Like that makes me so mad.
But yeah, so I mean, they're kind of like they're trying to make him seem like the Doctor, but the real meat of this episode is when the Doctor goes to meet the Dalek.
Yes.
And at first, it's a dark room because you have to have suspense.
Yes.
And all you see is the blue light. And to me, you would think the Doctor would know.
I don't think you see the blue light yet.
I think maybe, I think the blue light's there the whole time. But then the lights turn on and he's like, how?
Yeah,
how are you here?
Because he's like, I can help, I'm the Doctor. And he just goes, Doctor. And the Doctor's like, no. And then the lights flicker on and he goes, Doctor. And he's like, no.
And this is the first time you actually get to see like the Doctor angry, like
I love this
straight
part.
Up cruel. Like he wants to destroy this thing, even though he's up until now he's had this theme of like second chances.
Mm-hmm.
This Dalek, he's like immediately kill it. Like you have to exterminate it.
I love though how at first he's like banging on the door to get out, and the Dalek's like exterminate, and then he realizes that he's got like Dalek.
And then the Doctor immediately goes, "Wow,
Kill
kill yourself."
We're not there.
No, he does. He gets all up in his
why
little,
don't you just die?
Yeah, he's like, you're just not powerful anymore, and I am. Like he gets this kind of like God complex all of a sudden.
I love when the Doctor goes fully off his rails.
Yeah.
Because, like, this is such a good episode for that. Because, like, I think one of the things that, I can't really speak to old Who as much, but what I love about New Who is, or at least 9 and 10 especially, is he is such an ideal character for so much of it. And then you have these episodes where it's, like, the paint chipping off, basically.
You get to see how he actually is.
It's that, I don't know, maybe it's the masking.
Well, and this is also, like, where you get to find out more about the Time War and how he literally had a hand in killing this race. And if you don't know the Daleks, you don't know why that's so devastating.
Yeah.
Until later when you realize that they're, like, awful.
They're space Nazis.
Because all you see is that, all you hear is, like, the Doctor killed this race off. And you're like, oh, dang, is he maybe not as good as I thought?
Yeah.
But the parallels between him and the Dalek is so mwah. Because you have, like, well, this is, like, later, but you have a lot of, like, they even bring in regeneration.
Mm-hmm.
But that's for the last half of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember. They arrest the Doctor again or something?
Okay, so basically what happens is they go into the Metaltron's cage,
and the Doctor has his little like thing with the Dalek, and then he's like yelling about it, and then Van Staten comes in and is like, oh my god, you got it to talk, make it talk more, and the Doctor's like, you need to kill that thing right now, and then he gets the like weird torture guy, like, make him talk again, and the guy's like, with pleasure, and then he gets out like a buzzsaw. So this is the one thing I will say. What are they doing? What are they doing to the Dalek? Because, like, to me, what it seems like they're doing is taking, like, a belt sander to its outside.
Like, poking him.
The way that, what it looks like, at first I thought, like, maybe they were electrocuting him, but that's not what they're doing, because we know what electrocution looks like in Doctor Who, because we will especially see that later. So, like, they're attacking his shell, but he wouldn't be able to feel that because he's the monster inside. I know, because Van Staten doesn't know there's a monster inside. He just thinks that it is the alien.
So the Dalek's just being dramatic.
Yes, essentially. But so because the Doctor said stuff to the Dalek about the Time War and about the Time Lords dying, and the Dalek says something about like, oh, this is when the Dalek says something like, we are alike, and the Doctor's like, I'm nothing like you.
Meanwhile, he's like getting real close to becoming a Dalek.
And so they get back into the elevator, and Van Staten says something like, is asking the Doctor about the Dalek, and he's like, oh, it's this evil thing from this war, and then Van Staten says something about, so he's not the only alien on Earth, huh?
Yeah.
And then he stripped our man.
Yes. This is where I was trying to remember how this happens, because the next scene is just straight up he's shirtless.
Yes.
And they've like got him chained to the wall.
Yeah, he's like strapped, his legs are strapped to like a bed, but then they've got his like arms.
And this is the only time you see him without a shirt, and it's like extremely I don't want to say off-putting, but like you're like, whoa,
like, where did his clothes go?
Especially since he wears a giant jacket, you're like, oh yeah, I guess he does have nipples.
That's the problem, is this is the first time we see the Doctor's nipples, and you're like, why does he have nipples?
Why is he shirtless? Put a shirt on this man.
He's getting chilly, put it back on. It's like, and there's just something about it, and it feels like mean to say, but you just get so caught off guard by it. You're like,
because you don't, because the whole thing about like Doctor Who is that the character is very dressed up, even when they're wearing costumes, but just like they're wearing, especially the Doctor, since he's a cartoon character and wears the same outfit every day. It's like, whoa.
There's something about them changing him up that you're just like, something's wrong here. And then for the fact that he's like basically like borderline half naked, and you're like.
And they're like waterboarding him, and you're like, this whole episode
escalated. Well, this is the only thing that I will say that I think is a little funny, because it's not really clear what they're doing to him. Because, like, at first I thought it was, like, an x-ray machine, and I'm like, but x-rays aren't gonna hurt you, so is it, like, an MRI machine? But that's not how that works. So, like, they're doing something to him, and then they have that, like, really silly 3D animation of his two hearts going, but it only shows his heart, it doesn't show any of his organs, and that got me thinking about, like, how does Time Lord anatomy work? Like, because, like, in the human chest cavity, there's, like, space for the heart, right? So, does his lungs, like, are his lungs shifted to make room for the other one? I don't really get it.
I don't think they thought about that when they decided that.
That always made me really uncomfortable to think about as a kid, because I'm just like, where does it go?
Maybe he's only got one lung.
One really big lung. Which then, like, you fall down the rabbit hole of, like, Time Lord anatomy, and it hurts your brain a little bit. I will say the thing that I love, and I think, like, the Two Hearts thing is, like, a perfect example of that, is, like, Time Lords, they, like, well, we don't want to spend the money on making them, like, secretly have an alien form or something like that.
They're human, but they have, like, a thing you'll never see.
Yeah.
They have two hearts. We can't prove it, though. We'll just show some, like, X-rays.
Yeah, it's like, what's something that we can do that seems really alien to us, but is actually like a really easy thing for us to incorporate, because it doesn't require us changing them whatsoever, and we just have to mention it sometimes.
I think that's a solid way to do science fiction.
Yeah, it just is a little bit funny to me, because I think we've talked about this before, one of the things that I love about Doctor Who is, because of the lack of budget, they have to get creative with stuff.
How they get around things.
Yeah, and I think the Two Hearts is both a silly and good example of that.
This after the Doctor isn't getting scanned with his boobies out. Time
Lord titties.
Adam's like, I can show you our prisoner.
Yeah.
And he sneaks her down to the Dalek's chamber.
First, they, like, security cam in, and she just sees it getting tormented, and she doesn't have any context. This is what happens when you separate Rose and the Doctor. Bad shit happens.
She doesn't have the context. She doesn't know anything about this thing. So they go into the thing, and she's, like, immediately, like, empathizing with this alien. Because of course she is. And the Dalek is playing her like a fiddle.
The Dalek, like, acting like a wounded puppy is one of my favorite things.
Please,
I'm just a little guy.
I'm just a little guy.
I'm just a little guy, and I'm being so mean to me.
And then, I mean, there's the foreshadowing earlier about, like, how the Daleks can, like, repair themselves, and she, like, touches...
Mm-hmm.
Which... Okay, there's a thing where they mention the last person to touch the Dalek bursts into flames, and that doesn't happen.
No.
For some reason, I don't know why they added that in, but because she touches the Dalek's shell, he, like, absorbs her, like, DNA.
Yeah. And uses it to, like, repair himself,
This is what I thought was really interesting about this episode, because the Doctor-Dalek parallels are so strong that Rose fundamentally changes this Dalek.
The same way
she's changing the Doctor. And you have these two characters on, because, like, the Doctor kills because he has to, and meanwhile the Daleks kill because they want to.
Yeah.
And then you kind of switch them, like, bring them closer together, where the Dalek becomes more human and like he questioning itself.
Yeah.
And the Doctor becomes more like a
violent.
Dalek.
Yeah.
And so they almost become like the same character, but not quite.
Because the Doctor wants to exterminate the Dalek. Because if he kills it, then he's destroyed this entire species, which the Daleks think is the way to cleanse the world or the universe.
And, well, because there's the regeneration part now, because we have the actual, like, the Dalek literally regenerates.
Yeah.
I think he even says regeneration.
Yeah.
And then...
he fixes his ED.
The Dalek starts questioning its purpose, and...
That's long time from now.
Like, after that, but...
The first thing that he does is download
the internet!
Okay, so this is the thing that kills me, and again, this is, like, because the internet was so different.
So that's not how that works.
The Dalek knows what furries are.
What else is the Dalek?
The Dalek knows what vor is.
Can't.
The Doctor has seen DeviantArt. The Doctor has seen... Huh?
You said the Doctor.
The Doctor? I'm sure the Doctor's seen DeviantArt. The Dalek has seen DeviantArt. It's seen Tumblr.
This is 2005. None of these things exist.
It's seen Neopets.
It's seen Neopets. The Dalek has downloaded everything on the internet somehow, like, knows... What does he specifically know?
The Dalek knows Snape wives. Oh no.
That's why I'm like, how did the Dalek not download everything and immediately, like, kill me.
I just love the way it plugs in and it just goes, ah!
But he doesn't he use his plunger specifically? It's like,
yes.
Oh, he uses his plunger to escape after this. Like, after he puts his plunger on the wall and...
over the keypad. Well, because, Van Statten's like, he'll never guess the key code, and the Doctor's like, it will calculate 1 billion, like, possible key codes in a second. It's going to get out. And of course it does. But the plunger is so good. Like, because doesn't he kill the torture guy with the plunger?
I think he goes right onto his face.
The classic. I always want to know what they're doing, because it's too quick to be suffocation.
It's one of those things where it's like, you'll never know.
And that's, like, the terror of it, because it's too fast for him to be suffocating people with it.
But, like, how's he also, like, connecting into things?
Is there a little hand?
Is there a little...
One of his little tentacles comes out?
Oh.
He just sticks out and goes...
And then he, like, all the, like, military people, like, bring out their guns, and the Doctor's like, you can't, you already know this, you can't get into it, so you can't shoot it.
The very American response of, kill it with guns, and then
it get murdered.
Oh
and Vince Stan's like, dang, that sucks.
I love, so Rose and Adam get out of the room, and they, one of the security guards is like, these are civilians, it is your job, whatever your name is, to protect them, and so she takes off with them, and all of the military people, like, try to kill it, and it obviously doesn't work. And then we get the stairs.
The stairs, the age-old enemy.
Oh, I love it because they get to the stairs and immediately they're like, it can't go up the stairs. And then they start like nana boo booing.
Yeah, they're like cheering. It's like, how do you know that the Dalek has paused for like a minute and they're like so sure.
They're like, it can't. They're like, haha, can't you? They're like got like the loser.
They're doing Fortnite dances.
Fortnite dances.
Immediately it starts hovering and they're like, oh no!
But my favorite thing is it turns to them and goes and just goes elevate and it goes.
I'm like, oh god!
The dramatic music kicks in. This is one of those scenes where you know how they'll do like scenes where they take out the dramatic music and like to show how kind of silly it is.
Yeah.
I want to go in and edit that and be like, this is what it would look like. Like this is what it would be like without that because he just goes elevate. And they're like, holy shit. It's so funny. I remember I watched, like, I don't know if it was a documentary or a behind the scenes thing or something where they talk about this episode specifically. And they talk about how it's kind of a remake of an old episode because back in the day there used to, like, there was memes as long as, like, internet has, or as long as humans have existed. And it was a running joke in the old Who fandom that the Daleks can't do stairs.
Yeah.
So there's an episode of old Who where one of the Daleks elevates up the stairs. And it's, like, they interview some, like, old fans and they're like, this was the craziest shit
this was, like,
in the day.
You would not even believe.
And I love that. And I love how, like, it's one of those things again, like I feel like as good as this episode is, I wish I could like go back and rewatch for the first time as an old Who fan because I feel like it's so
the minute they start elevating you're like, oh my god,
like just the absolute like terror of like this thing being able to ascend stairs is so good. So they book it out of there and then this is so first the doctor's like, what level is this? They're like, oh, that's the armory. And he's like, arm everyone. The guards, the lawyers, the scientists, everyone gets a gun. And so they all load up and then they get to that like big room.
Oh my god.
I fucking love this scene.
This scene is so, because the Dalek's like, he's kind of being silly.
So first the Rose is like, you can't shoot it. It's not going to work. And he's like, I don't know how to take care of a tin can, ma'am. And so they like, are trying to, like, fill this thing full of lead, and it's, like, matrixing it, basically. Like, it just, like, is bouncing off.
And what the Dalek decides to do is hilarious.
It's insane.
Because he shoots the sprinklers, and they're like, that's weird. And then he immediately electrocutes them all.
He like soaks the room, and then he floats above the water, and then like shoots his weird little like electricity beam, and then everyone dies in one shot.
And I think this is a good representation of how the Daleks aren't just killing machines; they're also smart.
It's insane. And then there's like one guy that like gets away, and he just like shoots it, and it like I remember this episode scaring the shit out of me as a kid too.
Because it's like it's an instant death.
Yeah, and like the like the X-ray effect they do on everyone, where it's like the skeletons.
Sound that they make, the like is awful.
It's haunting. Like I think that's the funny thing about the Daleks is like they're so easy to make fun of with the way that they look, like the whole like evil salt
especially
and pepper
in the 21st century,
the plunger, etc., etc. But they're so scary. I love this episode so much.
And then, so, this immediately goes into the episode where the doctor's interrogate. Now, like, I can't remember how he gets to this part where he, I think, they're talking through the cameras, I think.
Yes, because Rose and Adam are running away and the doctor's having to close all the doors to try to stop the Dalek.
Which part does he tell him to kill himself?
That's way later, dog. We still got a way to go.
Wow, I just wrote age-old enemy stairs and then kill yourself.
No.
So I missed like all of that.
Yeah, we still got a ways to go.
Okay.
So
I'll let you remind me when we get to them.
Yeah. Well, so doctor's closing all the bulkheads. Adam gets through.
Oh my god,
but Rose doesn't.
See, that's weird because I wrote that before this scene. And this scene where Rose is stuck on the other side of the wall. They paralleled it. They later I know RTD was like, this would be hilarious. Like, I don't think he was thinking this far ahead, but the fact that Rose gets stuck on the other side of the wall and she tells the doctor that it's okay.
And she's like, I'm sorry, doctor, I wasn't fast enough. And you're like,
And the doctor fully, for like the next 10 minutes, thinks that he got Rose killed. And he goes into like
angry doctor.
He goes into beast mode. Like he's so mad at himself, but also everyone else because of how stupid this whole thing is.
He was fully ready to just deck Adam for leaving her behind.
Oh my god! Yeah, he was like, "Why didn't you help her?" And he was like, "I don't like." It was either me or we both die. Like,
and he was like, "Well, I wasn't the one closing the doors." And then we cut to Rose, and the Dalek is like, "Well, because
the Dalek can't kill her."
Like, no, and he's like, "Why can't I kill you?" And she's like, "I don't fucking know, dog. What do you mean?"
And then he's like, "You turned me into you. Like how?" And he's like, "This is interesting because." Whereas the more the Doctor becomes human, the more he like appreciates humanity, but the more the Dalek becomes human, the more he hates existence, and he just wants
the true human experience. Yeah, because he's like, "Why can't I kill you?" And she's like, "I don't know." And he's like, "I feel your fear."
Yeah,
which is insane for a Dalek because the idea is that you're not supposed to have any emotions beside hate. So you're like, "Uh-oh, that's interesting." And this is when, so the Dalek's like, "Rose is alive, let me out." And the Doctor's like,
"Oh my god.
Fine." And so he opens the door, and this is when they go to Adam's, like, little workshop, and they find all of these weapons.
The huge gun.
The just giant fuck-off gun is so funny. But the whole time, Rose and the Dalek are, like, talking to each other, and she's, like getting to know it, basically. And she's like...
The scene after that is so... I think we did miss the kill yourself scene.
Yeah, so it's when he's talking to Rose. Rose is like... Or the dog's like, "Let me out." And he's like, "I need orders." And the doctor's like, "Here's your order. Why don't you just die?"
Yeah, no, he literally says, "Why don't you kill yourself?"
When does he say that?
He says it, when he was like... I think it's right after... right after he knows that Rose is okay. And the Dalek's like, "I don't have a purpose, like, what do I do with my life? I don't have any commands." And he's like, "Here's a command. Why don't you just go kill yourself?" And the Dalek says, in retaliation to that, he says, "You would make a good Dalek."
Alright then.
Oh yeah, see, it's right after he kills everybody.
Follow this one. Kill yourself.
Yeah, he literally says kill yourself.
Okay, so it's during the rain scene.
It's during the when he makes the sprinklers rain, and he like...
I conflated two of the scenes.
Yeah, no.
Because
he turns... They're still, like, talking on the computer or whatever, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't..." Like, he's starting to question his purpose. And then, later, when he's with Rose, he's like, "I don't know how to exist like this, because Daleks aren't meant to have
emotions."
Feelings.
Yeah.
And... I think this is the part where the Doctor shows up with his giant gun, and he tells Rose to get out of the way.
First, they go into that, like, big, like, top part of the bunker, and the Dalek shoots, like, a hole in the ceiling. Yeah. I love this scene. And he's like...
He says specifically, "I want freedom."
Well, first, Rose says, like, "Oh my god, I never thought I would see the sun again." And the Dalek goes, "What does it feel like?"
Yeah.
And you're just like,
and then he opens up the casing, and actually... For the first time in its entire existence, because I'm pretty sure, like, from the minute they're made, they're in this Dalek cavity. He gets to feel sunlight, and that's when he starts to kind of, like, be like, "Oh, this is..." It's almost like a moment of, like, the Dalek realizes what it means to exist, but also, like...
What it's been missing.
What it's been missing, and that's why it ends up making it this choice that he makes.
This is the part where we get a little bit deep, because this is the thing that I find so fascinating about this scene in particular, is because the Daleks are so scary, and then it opens up and it's literally just this weird little wormy thing.
Yeah.
It's like this gross tentacle thing. Do you know, I know that the Dalek are very clearly, like, Nazi allegories.
Yeah.
But the way that I read it, honestly, and this is gonna seem like a stretch, but I'm gonna argue my point. They're men.
Yeah.
They are expected to not feel, to perform this version of violent masculinity, but inside they just want to be held and express emotion.
They're soldiers that are, like, literally, they don't have a choice.
Yes, they've been...
And that's what this episode's about, it's not about the Daleks being a murder machine, it's about how they're literally, like, aren't given a choice to exist. And when but they're so messed up that when they are given the choice, they don't
know what to do, because they've been exclusively taught that this is how things are. This is how you're supposed to express yourself.
And Rose this is probably the first time a Dalek has ever questioned its existence, and it's because Rose touched it.
It's almost a Beauty and the Beast type story.
Because, like, I know Rose touched, like, the casing, and not but it's, like, part of the Dalek. That's probably the first time a Dalek has ever been touched by someone and lived. And it's, like, it's such an interesting allegory.
And the fact that it's, because I can guarantee you majority of the scientists and stuff, well, come on, like, the last guy that touched it burst into flames. Rose is a woman. She touched it, and this is what happened. There's so many layers to it.
It's a lot of, like domestication.
It is.
Domesticating this Dalek.
Oh, this ball and chain! But it's just so fascinating because, like, I remember there was an article that came out recently that basically talked about how there's a study done where it was like young men aren't having as much sex as they want, was basically like what this thing was. But what they found in this study was it wasn't the sex that these men weren't having, it was the intimacy.
Being held.
And because they aren't taught that you can be affectionate with each other or find intimacy through non-sexual means, that like sex workers will talk about, like, getting hired, and then the guy's like, can I just talk to you about my day?
I don't think it's a coincidence that the reason the Dalek is changed is because he's touched.
Yes.
Like, I think that's kind of the point.
Yes, it's so fascinating that, like, because at surface level, it's one of those things where with Doctor Who, there's always a part of me that's like, it's not that deep, but it is that deep.
This is one of those episodes where I think it's literally that deep. Like,
yeah.
And it's not even deep on accident, like with the Unquiet Dead. Like, I think they literally were trying to make an allegory for, like, existence and soldiers and stuff like that. And also, the scene after this, the Doctor points his giant gun.
And it's very phallic.
And Rose, despite the fact that, like, this creature killed, like, literally mass murdered everyone except for her, she stands in front of him and tells the Doctor not to do it. And the Doctor's, like, he looks like he's gonna start crying because his only, like, friend in the world is defending this Dalek, and he doesn't understand why.
Yeah.
And then Rose is like, this Dalek, he just wants to feel, and she steps aside, and then you just see the Dalek kind of wiggling his little tentacles.
He's this sad little goopy mess.
And he's like, why do I exist?
It hurts.
It hurts, and I'm like, oof.
It's a rough episode, man. Like, for all of the faults of, like, Adam and stuff like that, this ending scene, like,
because then the Doctor has to look at his age-old enemy. He killed off all of the other race so that his people could survive, and that didn't even happen.
And so the universe could survive because the Time War was threatening to rip reality apart.
And he's staring at what he thinks is the last remaining Dalek. Also, they're the last of their species.
Yeah.
That's not a mistake, but he's looking at the last remaining Dalek, and he's like, I need to kill this thing. Like, every part of his body is telling him he has to kill it to protect people. But meanwhile, he's looking at it, and he's like, I can't do it.
It's very much, in a lot of ways, it's very much allegory for war in general. Because, in a lot of cases, it'll be like Group A and Group B are fighting each other, so we have to hate each other. But at the end of the day, they were just a group of people, usually young men, that were told you're supposed to hate this other group. Like, obviously, there's some cases where it's like, yes, these are people who need to be fist fought immediately. But, like, think about World War I, for example, right? Yes. It's like, you hate the Germans. Why?
Why, yeah.
You hate the British. For what reason? Like, they're just told that they're supposed to hate each other, and there's all these stories from the war where, like, a German and a British soldier, like, happened to be in a situation where...
realize that they had more in common.
And they're just like, oh, we're just both human beings that are now traumatized because the rich told us it's time to go to war. And they'll, like, meet up and be like, oh...
That's kind of, like, I think that's what the Doctor kind of has to deal with, because he's looking at this Dalek and he realizes that, like, this Dalek is almost pitiful. Like, he almost has to pity it because he's experiencing what it's been missing this whole time. Yeah.
Because the Doctor's been able to feel love and,
like, and that's what makes it so... That's what I think stops the Doctor from becoming a Dalek, obviously.
Is that why this Doctor is so physically affectionate with Rose?
I think
that... Because remember we talked about that.
Yeah, I think that's not, like, again, not a mistake that they chose physical affection. Because the reason Rose touches the Dalek is because she empathizes with it, and that she feels bad, and I think it's a moment of like she reaches out to touch it, as in like to comfort it, and I think that's what she does with the doctor, and in return the doctor's also very physically affectionate because he's also like extremely lonely.
Yes,
and
the man is touch starved.
There's definitely a theme in this specific season of like touch.
Yes,
and like how that can change a person. It can change a Dalek.
It's so crazy. I do think, though, as much as I empathize with the Dalek, we do have to recognize it's a Nazi.
Yeah, well, no, that's the whole point. Because in the end, he can't like
exist.
He can't deal with the fact that he has emotions, and he ends up, he kills himself. He literally like flicks a thing that explodes his head, his body, his little orbs.
The little orbs detach from the Dalek and create like a shield, and then it goes.
I think you're silly. Not, like. I think the point is you're not supposed to like feel bad. You're supposed to pity it.
Yes.
And you're not supposed to be like, oh, this is what they like. They are capable of good, because they're not. Even when he was feeling things, he still killed. The only reason he wasn't able to kill Rose is because they had a connection. Yeah. And that's when he started questioning himself, and
look at how that turned out.
Yeah.
It's such a layered episode. It's so good.
It is really.
This is episode. Again, I think I got like when I was listening back to I think the last episode, or not the last episode, one of the earlier episodes, when I got real mad about people skipping 9. Yeah. This just really reinforces my anger.
The scene where he's holding the gun and he's like, he can't decide whether to put it down or not. Like, Christopher Eccleston's acting, his facial acting,
capital
so
A
good.
acting.
Like he is so distraught because he's like, I need to kill this thing. Like, every part of my body's telling me I need to kill it. Rose is also like in the way.
Which he can't hurt Rose.
He can't hurt Rose. He has to protect Rose. Killing the Dalek's the only way to protect Rose. But Rose is telling me not to do it. And again, this is another moment of like the companion having to stop the Doctor from becoming a monster.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that the Doctor is flawed and that he isn't human. I think that's like one of the things is like, as we talked about before about how the Doctor seems to be on this pursuit of becoming human in a way. And this was kind of the reminder that he's not. At the end of the day, no matter how much we love him, he's not human. He has these other experiences that humans will not understand, and that like Time Lords inherently don't have.
I just want to see the scene.
It is no volume, bestie.
I know, I turned on the volume.
Okay. Her hair is so good.
The way she's standing.
It's the sunlight, that's all it wants.
Can I point out that you can see the fishing wire?
Like he's so like, look the way he's like he can't process what is happening. Yeah, and Rose straight up looks at the Doctor and says, "What are you changing into?" Like the Dalek is changing. What are you changing into?
It's such a good.
He's got such a giant gun in her face,
and like.
And he's having a moment where he's like, "Oh God, am I just as bad?"
Oh, Rose. Oh, they're all dead.
And the Dalek asks, "Why did they survive?"
It's so much. I want to finish watching this scene.
Ah.
I don't know. You're not even that. Rose did more than regenerate you.
I love that they use regenerate.
You absorbed her DNA. You're mutated.
I don't like the dripping.
I'm sorry.
Isn't that better?
Not for a Dalek.
It's not bad.
Oh, me too.
Oh yeah, and he needs Rose to tell him to kill himself.
God, this is both of our main characters telling someone to kill themselves.
But Rose doesn't want to, but then she realizes that it's actually a mercy for him.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
This is not life. This
Do it.
Yeah.
The little, like, weird heartbeat on its head is so much.
Rose almost like tripped.
She almost ate shit.
Oh, there's the little Orbeez.
The orbs are so strange. Ooh.
And he just explodes. The doctor's face. He's just fully like,
What just happened?
I don't understand what just happened.
It's such a good scene. I just, like... When he says, "Oh, Rose," you're just like, ah!
Because he realized, he's like, oh no, what have I done?
It's such a heavy episode. Like... And it's so good. It's like one of my favorites from this season.
It's definitely a strong contender for like the first half of the season.
Yeah, I'm excited. So we're gonna do our tier list at the end of the season, and I'm very excited.
I think this is like, I almost wish they hadn't, like, the next episode. Wish it hadn't happened, because
I agree.
It breaks the, like, I mean, we're getting a little bit into the next episode, but it breaks the, like, continuity and the, like, emotional. Because you go from this episode, and then the episode after is Father's Day, or it's The Long Game, and then Father's Day, and then The Empty Child. But even Father's Day is a really emotional episode, and then you just have this random episode in the middle with Adam.
Bane of my existence. Yeah. I hate Adam. The more
we can't end this episode on hating Adam.
Why not? He deserves it.
Because it'll be a negative ending to we should end it with talking about how much we love this episode.
Okay. I definitely think that this is one of, like, the most impactful episodes of Doctor Who, period.
I think it's the strongest Dalek episode.
Oh, 100%. If it weren't for the fact that The Lonely Child is, like, the scariest shit ever, it would probably be the best episode of this season, in my opinion. I think it's literally just Adam holding it back.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the bummer part, is I literally think if they just took him out, it would be a perfect episode.
He didn't, other than the fact that he brought, like, they had to separate Rose, and that he brought her down. He didn't really have a purpose. He could have just been an intern.
Yeah, and they tried to, like, make it a thing with the two of them, and they're just not good. Okay, so as we reach the end of the episode, so they go back to the TARDIS, and it's Rose and the Doctor talking, and Adam runs up to them and is like, "We gotta get out of here, they're gonna fill it with concrete and pretend it never happened," because the assistant makes the joke about how she's gonna wipe Van Statten's mind and, like, drop him off somewhere, and she says something about, like, because in the beginning it's like when he fires the guy for questioning him, he's like, erase his mind and drop him. It's like, I think it's like somewhere with an M, Minnesota, Mississippi, somewhere with an M.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the episode, she's like, wipe his mind and drop him in somewhere starting with a C, like Colorado or something. I don't remember exactly what they say.
The acting that this lady does is so funny because she's trying so hard.
She is the gaslight gatekeep girl boss of this episode.
She's so funny.
But I love how immediately she's like, "There's everyone dead. Fuck you. Get out of here." Yeah. Like the rise up.
I'm in charge now.
Yeah, good for her. Honestly, if the internet's going to be controlled by anyone, I at least want it to be a woman. But so they take him off, and then Adam is like, they're gonna fill the whole place with concrete. They gotta get out of here. And the Doctor, is this when the Doctor makes the joke about him being her boyfriend?
No, that's in the next
episode. So they're like, all right, we're gonna leave now then. And then they invite Adam to come with them for some reason. And he's like, well, did you hear what they said? They're gonna fill it with concrete. And
and he has the like, oh my god, it's the bigger on the inside moment. And you're like, you didn't deserve this.
You didn't deserve this. And then they whoop away. But it's an interesting episode. I love it.
Solid A, S tier.
Yeah. The Americans are weird. Take that as a general statement or in the show. No, I don't know, maybe it's just because there isn't really a reason for it to be Americans and I find it so strange.
Yeah, there's no reason for it to be Utah 2012.
Yeah, like, It's so random. I just like, oh, and in this episode, Rose makes the joke about she would be like 25 or something like that in 2012, which is so weird.
Too bad she doesn't make it. That far. I mean, in this universe.
Yeah, but it is a little bit funny. And
that's how I would be if I was time traveling. I'd be like, oh my god, we're in 2023. I would be 24 years old. Like, that's crazy.
Isn't that insane? Yeah, there's just always something about, like, it's like the fact that, Back to the Future went to 2012.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, or 2013, I don't remember which one it was.
It was something like that.
And then you're like, whoa, that's so far in the
future.
Like,
this was like 7 years in the future.
Yeah.
For them. Yeah. That's a long time. Can you imagine 7 years into the future now?
Oh my god, well, remember in the joke, and this is getting ahead of ourselves, but in the next episode, there's a joke about 2019, and like, there's like this great technology that happens in 2019, and you're like, no, it didn't. I'm sorry to break it to you. I love when that happens, when time travel stuff, you're like...
And then, because it never ages well.
Because it's always so hopeful. It's like, oh my god, we're gonna, like, skyrocket in our, like, abilities really soon. But, yeah, what a good episode.
Solid. This is kind of a nice refresher from the Slovene episode.
It really was, after the 2D2D.
There's only so much you can talk about with the Slovene. At least with this episode, you can get into, like, a deep... conversation.
Yeah, we can talk about the meaning of existence and brainwashing soldiers and the importance of physical affection and intimacy, whereas it's like farting weird and shaming fat people
and
bad.
Then the next episode's like Simon Pegg wears blue eye contacts or something like that.
I'm so disappointed we'll get into it. But Simon Pegg's such a big sci-fi fan. I wish they didn't waste him on that episode. Oh, we'll get into it, because that one's a whole other can of worms. But, yeah, so that's Dalek. That's just the fact that it's just called Dalek must have been
it's
terrifying.
Almost kind of like, it almost parallels the Rose's episode being called Rose.
Can you imagine?
Maybe they just weren't that
creative. Maybe. But it's still pretty impactful, and I can't imagine being an old Who fan and seeing that come up in the TV guide and being like, uh-oh.
I feel like it kind of spoils the episode, though.
But if you don't know what Dalek is, you're like, what the hell is this talking about?
True.
If you're like me and you think it was Dalek, and you're like, they spelled it wrong. Anyway, that's that for Dalek. Season 1, episode 7? Is that what we're on?
I don't even know what
it's episode 6.
I think it's 6, yeah.
Yeah, it's 6 because it's 4 and 5 is the Slovenes. Alright, that's that then.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Blue Box Banter. You can find us on Tumblr, Instagram, and YouTube under the username Blue Box Banter Podcast. New episodes release Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music. Thanks again for listening, and have a fantastic day.